My advice to anybody building a racetrack: first, don't build one. This was an anti-American track, for lack of a better phrase. Very European, very advanced, very, very difficult. We're talking compressive braking zones, off camber after apexes, blind corners that are uncompressive, compressive corners. A lot of the pros call our track diabolical.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Horsepower Heritage. I'm Maurice Merrick. Greetings to all of you listening from around the globe, and it's great to have you here again for another episode. I'll bet if I asked you to grab a pencil and paper and write a list of 100 different businesses you might consider getting into, building a racetrack would not be in there. So with that premise in mind, I want you to think back to 2008. The global economy was sent into the worst recession in 80 years. It was an incredibly risky time to start any business, let alone a racetrack, but that's exactly what today's guest was doing in 2008. Jeremy Porter is the creator and chief executive officer of Atlanta Motorsports Park, a racing playground in Dawsonville, Georgia. And that area's racing roots go all the way back to the moonshine days of the 1930s, basically the birth of stock cars. Atlanta Motorsports Park is nestled in rolling hill country, and they've got probably the best karting circuit in the United States, if not the world, as well as a main circuit that was designed by Herman Tilke, who's designed racetracks all over the world, including a bunch of Formula One circuits. I think he's got about 75 tracks to his credit. So you're about to learn how to create a great racetrack from square one. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Jeremy just let it all hang out. And our discussion is full of great insights that you could apply to any project you might set out to do in life. Just good lessons about making a plan, doing your research, becoming an expert, and accomplishing things that might seem impossible to the people around you, if not yourself at times. Anyway, it's an incredible story, and talking to Jeremy left me energized and impressed, and I think you will be too. So my guest is Jeremy Porter from Atlanta Motorsports Park, and that's coming up right after this. Hi guys, Maurice Merrick here, and I want to tell you what's new at Model Citizen Diecast. First, there's the 1971 Mario Andretti Ferrari 312 B2. It's a Formula One car in 1/43rd scale, and it's perfect for that shelf in your office. Or how about a pair of 1966 Porsche 906s, both from the Targa Florio and in different liveries, also in 1/43rd scale. And you can see these and many more special cars at ModelCitizenDiecast.com. Use the promo code HERITAGE at checkout for 10% off your order. Limitations apply. From race cars to street cars and everything in between, it's Model Citizen Diecast. Because your inner child still wants to play with cars. Jeremy, great to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's nice to speak with you as well. Excited to be on the podcast.
Your facility there, I haven't been there, of course, but it looks amazing. Just watching some of the karting that goes on down there is really exciting. I kind of inundated myself with YouTube videos on karts at Atlanta Motorsports Park, and wow, what a thrill.
Yeah, the kart track is kind of our secret sauce, our secret recipe to what we can talk about a little later, and that's the motorsports ladder. But as you may or may not know, all kart tracks are pretty much pancake flat, and that as the most radical elevation change of any kart track in the world. It's got a 4.5-story drop and about 120 feet, and it is bananas. And initially, 10 years ago, everybody was terrified of it. They're used to seeing all the turns and not having any blinds, and they were scared they were going to die or blow up their motors or burn up their clutches and everything. And it's now widely accepted and known as one of the best kart tracks in the world. And from a digital domain, it is the most played go-kart track on video games of any go-kart track in the world. So it's something else. We kind of fell onto that.
Now, you're a former karter yourself, right? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I road raced go-karts for about 5 years and, on the big tracks, the Road Atlantas, the Barbers, the Roebling Roads, and things of that nature, and it was shifters, 125cc shifters, the sit-up shifters, and, it was a heck of a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It taught me how to drive and drive smart because you can end up 6 feet under if you don't, and really you know invigorated my passion for motorsports. And I landed into karting because of injuries from motocross, supercross. So it was a natural progression or transition into something a little safer. With age, get a cage. And I was moving more towards the cage as I got wiser and older.
Now, did you get into karting more or less kind of as a weekend therapy kind of thing? Because I know you've been involved in a lot of different businesses. You're multi-talented, a lot of disciplines. Was that just kind of your escape from the workaday world?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, it sharpened my saw from a mental perspective. It gave me that competitive need that I had to compete, and then from a mechanical standpoint, I love just wrenching and working on things in cars and karts and bikes and things of that nature. So it was more psychological polishing than anything, and it was so enjoyable. I mean, we would hang out and in the pits after the race and say, why were you on the track? What happened? I can say so many bad things right now and I won't, but we would just basically rib each other the entire time, and it was very enjoyable.
Friendly rivalry, lots of camaraderie.
Sometimes not so friendly.
Well, and the other thing too is whether it's karting, motorcycles, whatever, it's a great way to free your mind and just have a singular focus on that, empty every other thought out of your head.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, when we would race go-karts, that's when shifter go-karts were really, I think, at their peak. We had one race at Road Atlanta where we had 150 shifter entries. It was Road Atlanta's first leg back into karting because they had some incidents many years ago, and I talked the CEO of Road Atlanta into having a race. And on the start line, we had 150 carts, and they had a great idea to start in the outer paddock and wave the flag from the outer paddock. Well, if you've ever been to Road A, the outer paddock narrows into a one lane entrance into the track, pit out, of course. And to see 150 carts funnel into one lane, it was carnage. I mean, people were flying all over the air, and I mean, just complete utter chaos. And then they ended up starting on the main straight after that. They learned the next day, but it was a hell of a lot of fun, and the competition was so fierce because people were spending $200,000 a year racing a go kart, and the ignition mapping and all of the stuff that they were doing at that point in time was just bleeding edge type things, and it became a wallet race rather than a race. But the competition was unbelievably fierce, and I was a one man show. I did my own wrenching, did my own tuning, and somewhat did the own driving. So it was a lot of fun.
Now, most people I think are familiar with karts and they realize that this is the training ground. This is the entree to professional racing for a lot of drivers. And it has been for a long time, but give people an idea of the performance of these karts. Like you said you raced 125s. So that's like an 80-mile-an-hour top speed, right?
In road course racing, that cart, if you're in a draft or if you're in a train, you'll get 125, 130 on the big road courses,
Wow. Okay. All right.
and they'll do 0 to 110 in about 6 seconds. They pull 3 Gs of force in a corner. The best, street cars, maybe 1.9 G. You have to, or 1.19 G. You have to wear a rib vest to keep your ribs from breaking because of the G force, and they have 5 Gs of braking. So they call them $1 million car that's not $1 million. And the 250 version is not as good in the handling of the corners, but it will out accelerate and out brake a Formula One car. So the F1 guys, the Indy guys, IMSA, and people like that in their off season, a lot of them use that go kart platform to keep sharp because everything happens so much quicker in a go kart. When I'm in a race car, even a downforce, type car like a radical or open wheel or whatever have you, everything seems very slow. I can, this is exaggeration for effect, but really look at my watch while I'm driving, because the karting is just, it's very, you know, clinical and precise and fast. And then, think of 30, 40 go karts all, on the grid, and every one of them accelerate like rockets. And it is just very intense and very, very competitive.
Oh yeah, it's like watching a swarm of angry bees fly by. I mean, it's super intense, as you say. The responsiveness of the carts is just unbelievable. It almost defies logic, especially in the lateral G forces and stuff. Insane.
Yeah, it's when I to this day watch a go kart race, it scares me. But being in the go kart, it's not as scary as it is watching from the sideline, because you just think that cart is not going to make it through that turn, and there's no way they're going to be on the binders hard enough to be able to make it, through this 90-degree turn. And these guys are 2 inches apart, and it's really open wheel. I mean, they have bumpers around them, but you touch, and you're going to helicopter, you're going to be on your lid, and some stuff's going to happen. And I'll tell you an industry statistic that WKA, a guy from WKA told me, that it's safer per capita than Little League Baseball, which is very surprising. More so on the sprint tracks. I did mainly road course racing and go karts, and then I went to car racing and road courses. But so it's amazing, and as I said earlier, they call it $1 million car that's not $1 million, and the price per horsepower and consumption, your consumables, your tires, your brakes, your rotors, your motor health, things of that nature are a tenth of what you would have in a car. A set of tires is $250, and you can run a half a season. Now, you're not going to be competitive, but if you're just out there, willing and clicking off laps, you can just go and go and go on those tires. And of course, the performance is going to fall off, but then you have to drive more. And, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's very inexpensive. And we're, you know, below water deep in it, not knee deep. I mean, we are swimming in it, and we just really are trying to innovate and do cool things. There's a lot of stuff back there at the kart track that we have been doing that we haven't seen other people do, and it's sexy and cool and different.
You mentioned Little League, and that's apropos because you've got kids as young as 5 that are getting their feet wet in karting, right?
Yeah, it's so, we now just ordered some electric go karts that we can put 3-year-olds in, which is
Wow.
unbelievable. Now we basically put them in a little bullpen and with plastic barriers and limit the speed. And when they let off the gas, it automatically brakes, just like one of the cars you see the kids in the neighborhood have. And so at 5 years old, we do what's called a junior discovery experience. And I taught this for a while, and it was so much fun. So junior discovery experience is, we have 12 kids, usually between 5 and 7 years old, some 8, some 9. And we put them in go karts, and we charged, I believe it was 149 initially, and we booked it and sold out every time we did. And we quickly learned that we had to tie a rope to the back of this go kart because they would pin it and never let off. I mean, you could stand in front of them and wave stop, and they would never let off. So we had a ski rope with a ski handle that we would hold on to the back of the go kart, and we would teach the kids to start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And then we would go through a cone course and then go back through a cone course. And they had to slam on the brakes in a little box with us holding onto the ski rope. And these kids were just terrifyingly fearless. And 8 out of 10 times, the girls that would show up would crush the boys. And I just loved it. And to see them light up and to get it and to understand and to really enjoy it was just really, you know, satisfying for me, because you're getting them into that passion, you're getting them into that performance, you're teaching them about um, discipline and focus and safety. And these were some of the core things that we would talk about with them as part of it. And the program would only last, about 2.5 hours. And to put 12 little kids through, in a go kart through a program in about 2.5 hours was hard work, but extremely rewarding. And our conversion from that is probably 60-70%. uh, we were shocked at the conversion. The conversion is far greater there than it is in our standard go-kart racing school. But again, that's one of the rungs in our ladder to motorsports. And we just really want to start them early and get them acclimated and interested in the sport. And then we can facilitate everything from the individual training to group training to selling them the go-kart to tuning the go-kart to storing the go-kart to renting them a garage. And now we're putting 27 tiny homes that are going to be around the Nürburgring carousel on the main track that faces the go-kart track. So we have, that to look down on the go-kart track. It's fun.
So, Jeremy, karting, as you're alluding to, is just one aspect of Atlanta Motorsports Park. The karting track is 0.83 miles, right?
Correct.
And then you've got a 2-mile road course, a skid pad, you've got teen driving school, you've got racing school. We're going to get into all of it, but why don't we step back a little bit and talk about the genesis of Atlanta Motorsports Park? How did you come up with this idea and how did you make it happen?
It was bad mushrooms on pizza.
I mean, I can't imagine going into an investors meeting saying, I want to build a racetrack.
Oh my God. So here's really the genesis of it. So back in 2000, I reached out to the CEO of Road Atlanta, Mike Swain, a fantastic guy, and said, hey, why don't we build a smaller track at Road Atlanta that's also a go-kart track, and we'll make it into a country club. And that was a radically new concept. I think Jack Farr at Motorsports Ranch was the first country club in 2000 or 99. But nobody really had a country club for go-karts. But so I wrote the business plan for them. We designed the track with Apex, a company called Apex. I don't think they're around anymore, and literally had everything ready to roll. And so I presented it to Mike Swain, the CEO of Road Atlanta, and Mike said, we're in. I want to do it. Mike Swain presented it to Scott Atherton, to a lot of people still know. And Scott said, I think I like this. Let me present it to the late Don Panos. And at that time, Don and I weren't friends. We later became friends. And interesting guy. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to talk to him or sit with him and stuff, but unbelievably smart guy. And I'd sit in front of him and he created the nicotine patch, the transdermal, patch. And you'd sit in front of him and he would have a giant ashtray of cigarettes, and his office just reeked of cigarettes, and he would chain smoke the whole time. It was funny, but anyway, I'm off target. But so anyway, Scott and Don were on a jet on the way to, I think it was France or Europe or something, and then Scott presented it to Don, and Don said, I really don't know. You make the call. So as I heard this, and I haven't heard this from Scott, but I heard this through Mike Swain. Mike Swain said, "Hey, Scott came back to me and he said, since I have to make this decision, I'm not knowledgeable enough, I'm not comfortable enough. We're just going to make no decision and not do it." Well, I couldn't get it out of my head and heart. It made me crazy. So I'm sitting in the pits at a kart race with some rich friends, and I definitely was not one of those guys. And said, "Let's build a kart track. Let's build a country club kart track." And they're all like, "Yeah, let's do it." So that was 2007. So I rewrote the business plan, dusted it off, looked at building a club track that also could be a go-kart track. So 1.25-mile car track that could double as a go-kart track. And we had it so you could slice and dice it. 2008 happens, and at that point, I had the COO of SunTrust Bank on. I had all these investors. You know, if you had a pulse, you could get money. And I presented it to them all, and they said, "Let's roll, let's go." And then 2008 happened, and the world fell apart. Well, I put up a pretty website and made a lot of promises, and talked to a couple different people about land, one in Lumpkin County and one in Dawson County. We're in Dawson County now, and said, "Let's roll." And everybody disappeared. Well, honestly, I didn't feel like I would be the jockey to ride us across the finish line. I thought I would be, you know, one of the horse trainers, one of the people that are in the background and not really the forefront of this project. I didn't have, honestly, the confidence, the ability, the industry knowledge, the any capital raising experience, any development related or any development experience or construction experience. So I was waiting in a complete black box of unknowns for me. So at that point, the wheels came off, the world came to an end, and I said, "You know what? There's a potential with people with torches behind me, and there's open road in front of me. I'm going to fight." And I did just that. And the great thing about not knowing what you're doing is you come up with a lot of weird ideas. And one of those ideas was we had 32 bids when we got our grading contract out. Well, a year ago, you were lucky if you got one or two because everybody was so busy. We had bids as far as Michigan. And so I went to the investors and the people that I'd been talking to originally and said, "Hey, what do you think if I go to the contractors and say, finance your own work?" They said, "They're not going to do that. You're crazy." So I called the top 5 healthiest companies, and three of them almost hung up on me and laughed me off the phone. Two of them said, two of them said, because what I said is, I said, "Listen," I said, "together we may make it through this. Apart, neither one of us will. Let's try to combine efforts and make it through it." And so two of them said yes. So then I did the same thing with the debris fence, with the guardrail, with the asphalt, with the stormwater, with anything and everything I could. And then I started selling memberships. So I sold $3.5 million in memberships in real cash, not IOUs that went into an escrow account. I had about, it was probably around 5.5 million in contractor financing, anywhere from 30 days terms on the asphalt, which was about 2.5 million of it, to 90 days to 3 years terms on the grading and the retaining walls. We had $1.5 million in retaining walls. And so I started selling memberships. I sold $3.5 million in memberships, and then I started raising equity. And I raised equity in 100,000, 50,000, $250,000, or $500,000 staunches, and I valued the business at $10 million, which was undervalued. But so if you put in $1 million, you were 10% owner. If you put in 100, you were 1%. So I literally would, as I needed money, I would smile and dial and sell memberships as fast as I could. And then I had a list of people that I would call for equity injections. So my average burn was $283,000 a month. And we never missed a payment. And it was me and one other lady, Becky Powell, which was amazing. And she really helped with the business. And we were a team of two.
Jeremy, were you doing this full time or were you still working in another industry?
I was working in another industry for about the first 8 months. And then I went full time to this. And I was very frugal. I paid off my cars. I lived extremely below my means. I had almost no debt. So I had a little bit of a runway to be able to survive and to not not run out of cash. So my first seed money was $100,000 that I raised from a guy named Martin Kalk, who is a fantastic guy, Dutch guy, that gave me the initial seed money to be able to go to market and, buy a PA and a tent so I could go to car shows. I mean, it was quite funny. But so in that, I just raised equity and I sold memberships. So when we got to a certain threshold with memberships, I said to the member base, I said, listen, guys and gals, I want to release these funds. I don't have enough to build the track, but I have enough to take the land down, which I got the landowner to owner finance, and move forward. And if this thing falls apart, well, I'll just become owners in the land and I'll revert the ownership to the land. So we moved along, and I received a letter from an attorney that I was being sued for 9 counts of whatever from a horse farm across the street that had tons of money, tons of time. And so that was thrown into the mix. So then conventional financing was, off the table. And it took us about 2.5 years to open because we had lots of issues. We were the only large project in the state of Georgia, large to medium. We were one of 2 tracks that I know of under construction in America, possibly in the world. And it was tough. It was very tough. I mean, we didn't have bonds on any of the project because the contractors were financing the work. So they would have their equipment repoed and I would show up the next day and their equipment would be gone. And it was just terrifying. But we never missed a payment, which is staggering to me. Staggering. And, I want to take a step back because this was the thing that I was very curious when I started this business. I like standing on the shoulders of the giants who have been there and learning from people and their mistakes. So I called every track owner I could get on the phone. What works, what doesn't, blank sheet of paper, tax structure, org structure, what would you change, what would you omit, and why? And then I would call all their staff and I would piss so many people off, Maurice, because I just really wanted to learn and I really wanted to validate what they told me because what the CEOs told me was the polished political, investor facing type, member facing type answers. And then what the maintenance and engineering and sales and marketing would tell me would be completely different. And with that, I compiled all these things. And then I found a lot of little sweet spots in the industry with price points that seemed to work and work very well, like garages, rental garages. We have 205 luxury rental garages. That's got to put us up in the top of rental garages. We're not talking condos that we're selling now. And the price point of it, we've always had a waiting list of 30 to 40 people, and they just print money and there's sustainable dial tone revenue. And I just learned a lot of different things with price point. I learned a lot of mistakes that people made with improper tax planning and structure and how they put things together and how they had a big tax bill at the end of the first year and almost put them under. I learned, guest passes and never discount a membership. We never have, ever, not once ever. In 13 years, we've been open 10, but I started 3 years before. Never have we ever. So there's none of that. Hey, he got $1,000 off. I want to get $1,100 off so I can beat my buddy. It was a crazy road, but we went into that lawsuit, which really sucked a lot of wind out of our sails and made it difficult for potential members to join because they were like, hey, there's a lawsuit and there's a Facebook page against you and a website against you and all these different things. I mean, these guys were well funded and well organized. And so we went all the way to Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, and won. And it was a mess. It was a mess. And I learned a lot from that. But, so there's me licking my wounds for a minute. But I can tell you all sorts of funny stuff about zoning hearings and picketers and death threats and gunshots to our entrance sign. it was,
It sounds like a new miniseries.
oh my God.
Well, I love the mix of pragmatism and just that pie-eyed ambition. I mean, you sort of have to have both, right? If you're gonna make it happen. And
well, here's what's interesting is because of all that research that I did, I knew where all the bodies were buried. I could tell you stats and statistic down to the hair on any and all complex and motorsports complexes. So when I sat in front of potential members and I sat in front of potential investors, I was quick and I had answers and I had real answers, not bullshit. The second component is I practice on people I didn't think would be investors and members so I could polish and clean up my pitch and figure out what the warts were relative to the business. The other component is I had 4 probably 1.25 inch thick binders of information. And these were anything from letters from the power company saying we can get you power and water company and so on and so forth, which are part of your due diligence relative to any sort of development and construction. And then I had letters, and then I had a 38-page or 48-page executive business plan summary that I would hand people. And in there, when I would sit in front of them, I would walk in with literally it was a good 7 inches of binders, and I would drop them on the table, and I would say, point to anything in this business plan, and I can give you the details behind it.
Very smart.
And so I was buttoned up, more so than I historically am and am today, but I just knew I had to be. Then I evolved it to a 2-page business plan. And then I'd say, okay, after you read this, we can meet and I'll determine if I want you to invest in the business, and you can determine if you want to invest in the business. So I had a little bit of chutzpah, not cockiness, but a little bit like I'm after the right partners. I'm after the right character and the right people, not after money, because there's plenty of money for me to be able to get. And there's only one investor that I've gotten in the history of the business that's been contentious and difficult, and the rest have been fantastic. And that was very important. I would be willing to bet in real equity cash. I turned down probably 15, 20 million. I mean, that's how much money I rejected taking. And there's 2 or 3 people that I clearly remember walking out of the room going, run like hell, because there's people with money, not all, have money because they see opportunity and they see weaknesses, and they can exploit weaknesses or opportunities and take things from people because they can out lever them with legal ease. They can out financially spend them with papering people from a legal perspective. And so I was very selective, and I could see, with some of these people that would give me term sheets or commitment letters, that there were levers in there that I knew we wouldn't reach or achieve as a business. So they were literally trying to run me out of runway so they could work me for a year, take the business and run with it. And my advice to anybody building a racetrack: first, don't build one. That's my best advice. Go spend your money, time, and effort somewhere else. It makes a hell of a lot more money, unless you're building real estate with it and a go-kart track. Then you can make some money. But my second one is be very selective, because you're married to these people, and you're going to roll over in bed every morning to that person with bad breath and messy hair.
It's not often that on this show we talk about how the sausage is made, but I think it's really fascinating because, as I said at the outset, going into an investors meeting and pitching a racetrack sounds cuckoo, and you're very frank about it, and that's great. So, when did Herman Tilke get signed on? And just so people just so people know who Herman Tilke is, he's an F1 track designer. He's designed like 75 tracks. He's reworked some of the most historic tracks out there. So, that's a heavy hitter.
This is another really funny story. So, a guy named Christian Epps reached out to me, and Christian is their kind of North America, South America sales guy. He's a German guy, fantastic guy, good personality, highly intelligent. Reach out to me and said, "Hey, we want to work with you. We'd like to redesign your track because I already had a design." Little did he know, when members would say, hey, potential members or potential investors would say, hey, let's go to lunch. I learned quickly that lunch was expensive. So I'd say, no, let's go have coffee. So, I mean, literally, I was that frugal because I had no money. So they said, hey, we want to design your track and, redesign it. And I said, listen, guys, I said, your budgets for bathrooms is more than my entire budget. I can't afford you, not in a million years. So they said, yeah, you can, and so I think their number was 300,000 euro. I can't remember without civil engineering, or maybe it was 200,000. I can't remember what it was. So I said 50,000. And I wasn't negotiating with him. I just didn't have any money. I didn't even have the 50,000 at that time. And, it's important to know that I didn't put a penny in this business. I still own 60%. I've sold some equity off recently in the last couple of years, but I was just being smart and frugal. And so they laughed at me and said, we can't do it. We won't do it. So about 3 months later, they called us back and because nobody was building anything and said, come on, let's do it. And I said, 50,000. And they're like, no, no, no. And then we talked again about 3 months later. So we ended up at 70,000, 71,000 or 72,000. Maybe it was 74. I can't remember. It was 13 years ago or 12 years ago. Why 71 or 72? That's the conversion from 50,000 US to euro.
Okay.
So then they said, okay, I said, but I don't have that money. So you're going to have to give me terms. And they're like, what? We're not giving you terms. We don't give anybody terms. Pay us up front. And I said, well, we can't work together. I'm sorry. I'm not being a negotiator here. I'm just trying to come up with a compromise that we can work together. So they gave me 7 or 8 months terms, which is unheard of for a company like theirs and unheard of for anybody. But remember, this was 2008, 9, and 10 when the wheels had come off. No construction was happening. No development was happening. No home building was happening. And nobody was lending money. So it was good for them and good for us. And they they had done Coda's design, I think, at that point, or that came after us. So there was really no Tilke tracks in the U.S. And it's important to know that these guys, nobody touches Tilke. I mean, they walk on water. They build the best tracks. They have the best knowledge base. They have the best tools. They're great people. Johannes over there is great. Carson, which is Herman Tilke's son, which is now Dr. Carson, actually, he's a PhD, has taken over the helm, and just really good people. And they've been really good to me because I was a tough client. Because I was in a lawsuit, I had no money, I had no knowledge, and I was a cranky ass. So negotiate a little too hard with a little too many people, and the only reason I did it is I just didn't have it to negotiate. But so anyway, they designed the track, and with it, they said, Jeremy, don't build a big track that you can run go-karts, build a go-kart track and a main track. So we ended up building both. And the bad part about Tilke is they had said, hey, the FIA won't allow us to dump all these bags of tricks on the Formula One tracks because that's pretty much everything they did was Formula One tracks. And they're going to kill me for saying that price. I mean, it was and for everybody out there in podcast land, this was the world had come to an end. So this thing can happen again. But it was utterly inexpensive. But it was good marketing for them to get into the US market. It was good for us. And here's why we were on the radar with so many people. We I really, I want to be a good steward of the resources that we've been given. And just because I burn fossil fuel in a high horsepower car, race car, or go kart or whatever doesn't mean that I don't care about the environment. So this is what was so funny is this was right at the advent of people talking about green and green energy and lead certification and things like that. So I put out press myself and said we want to be the only ground up green sustainable motorsports racetrack in the world. Well, that's an oxymoron. It's illogical. So we were in crazy publications. I'm going to exaggerate for effect, but nothing related to motorsports, like Better Homes and Garden. I mean, we were everywhere in the all over the globe, which was very odd because I was just a machine. I mean, I was just press releases, emails, anything I could do to create a stir, Facebook, anything. And so that's it. I think Tilke saw that as we were really good marketers, or I was a good marketer until I've hired our current marketing team, which are far better than I am today.
And I got to mention that Herman Tilke incorporated two very classic features from European circuits: the Eau Rouge corner from the Francorchamps circuit in Belgium, Spa, and the carousel from the Nürburgring, which I thought was kind of just an interesting detail.
Yeah, it is. And I lost my train of thought. I remember what I was going to tell you. The cool part about Herman and his team is they're just mad scientists, just brilliant engineers and architects. And they always come up with great ideas, crazy ideas, which is not very common for engineers, architects, or civils. And they had said, hey, we want to dump all of our bag of tricks on your track that the FIA won't allow us to put on it. And I said, that sounds great. I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. And so what happened is the technicality and the difficulty of our track is completely un-American. American tracks are very much big straightaway, high horsepower, right footed, and then some corners, another big straightaway, high horsepower. Well, this was an anti American track, for lack of a better phrase. Very European, very advanced, very, very difficult. We're talking compressive braking zones, off camber after apexes, blind corners that are uncompressive, compressive corners. It is a lot of the pros call our track diabolical. And a lot of the pros, I can name a lot of them, you see them on TV all the time, say we can learn a track in 3, 5, 10 laps. And we're here half a day and we're still struggling on the track. So, what that has lent to, and a byproduct, is we've really owned what we're about. We're about a learning track, an advanced track. If you can be fast here, you can be fast anywhere. And it's proven by our members and the race teams that are housed here. And the race teams are going to be pissed at me for saying this, that it's their secret sauce and why they're always on the podiums, because there's no time to breathe here. And the track's so advanced, you're just boom, 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 boom. Deep breath, boom, 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 and there's no time to breathe. So not only is it a mental, emotional, kind of physical training ground, it's just got a little bit of everything, and it builds that confidence and those skills that you need to stand up on the podium with the other pros.
And just to give people an idea, maybe by way of comparison and lap times, what's the record lap time at Atlanta Motorsports Park versus maybe another closely comparable track?
Oh, Lord, I could have given you this down to the number because we had it from Team Yost in their dorsal fin car would. Their lap time was 1:13 here. I don't know what it is at Road Atlanta, but I know we were doing 1:30s in a shifter go-kart at Road Atlanta. And so, in the hands of a pro driver, our average speeds and lap times are not off that many tracks. It's very funny. But you got to remember that a majority of our demographic, actually 80% of our member demographic, has never been on a track. And 95% of those people aren't great at wheeling around the track. They're just not natural talented people. It's very hard to be talented on a racetrack, and that's not knocking them. It's just difficult. So we've got a lot of, oh, the track's slow, it's technical, but if you put it in the hands of a pro or a semi-pro, it's fast, and the lap times are fast, and the top speed is actually faster than Barber, for example, in the hands of an advanced or pro driver or intermediate plus, for lack of a better phrase. So we're adding a track extension. We have it designed. Herman designed it. Tilke designed it now. And this will put us to 2.34 mile. And we're going through permitting right now. And it's interesting to note that we have 68 feet of rise between turn 11 and turn 12 on our track. That is a lot. That's more than the Laguna Seca corkscrew turn 11 to turn 12 at Road A. And then the extension, you're going to come off the backside of that and you're going to drop 100 feet. You just came up 68. That's going to be like falling off of a cliff. And then you're going to go to a 14-degree bank turn. Why 14 degrees and not 16? Because 16 plus degrees, the cars won't survive through the turn. The tires won't, because it's not like a constant where NASCAR, you have a constant pressure on the upper set of tires. It is highly compressive coming down 100 feet, then to a 14-degree turn. So I think Tilke worked with Michelin or Pirelli, and they did simulations over and over and over and over. And 14 degrees was the safe number to be able to get through that extension. And then you'll reconnect on to turn 15 on the, or 14 on the track. And then we're going to push in turn 15 about 80 feet to make it straighter to turn 16 to increase the speed on that straightaway for the intermediate and beginner drivers, so they can scare their wife, girlfriend, friend, husband, boyfriend, whatever, by pointing at the speedometer and saying, look, I can do 160, mom. And so it'll decrease some of the technicality in one corner of the track and increase the speed quite a bit in two sections.
Let's talk about racing school, Jeremy.
Well, so we've got a few different schools here. We've got a teen driving school, which is something near and dear to my heart that we can talk about in a minute. We have a primal racing school, which is uses the Radical SR1, SR3 as their racing platform. And we have a kart racing school, and then we have the Junior Discovery School. And we also have a stunt school, too. And so we've partnered with Primal Racing. Primal Racing, again, they use the Radical SR1, SR3 platform, and they really do an exceptional job. First, the equipment, the cars are outstanding. It's not your typical race school where you're like, God, I hope this thing stops or starts, for that matter, and not all of them are that way, but a lot of them are really long in the tooth and really beat up. And the equipment that the guys at Primal have are unbelievably well done. And so the school is very good for people that are beginners all the way to advanced. The facilities are stellar, and their platform and program in which they teach is a little more innovative than others. And then they have a lunch with people that most schools don't provide, which I find very strange. Some schools do, some schools don't, and where the instructors eat with them and they connect. But the idea is accessibility for motorsports. And part of that ladder that I've been talking about anecdotally through this conversation is if somebody wants to step into motorsports, by God, we're a cult. Join our cult. Come, take the red pill or the blue. We want everybody and anybody. We are not selective, and we want racing to be your drug of choice. And so there's an entry point from 3 years old to, we've got a go-kart member that's 88. But so it doesn't matter if you're man, woman, or child. there's a place and a space that you can get into the school here. And Primal is definitely one that's very good.
88 years old, bless his heart.
We don't know if he's coming back off the track every time he goes.
Well, that's amazing. Um, I think we should mention safety a little bit because it's a huge consideration, right? It's safety first, in fact.
Yeah, it's interesting. America is upside down with our just litigious nature, our predatory nature. I want what you have. I'm going to sue it out of you. I'm going to sound very cynical here. I'm going to sound jaded, and rightfully so. We've been very fortunate to really not have any major injuries, knock on wood, in 10 years. But the ambulance chasers are out there and they look for the big policies and any sort of opportunity. So I am Rain Man when it comes to safety here. We mark, the entrance gates have large signage that say, hey, you can die passing through these gates. I mean, we're honest and or get seriously injured. The wristbands, because we've had people cut wristbands off and give them to people outside of the gate. On the inside of the wristband, I had verbiage that I created and wrote that says, listen, hey, you agree that you've signed a waiver and that you can die, and this wristband, putting this wristband on, you agree to those terms. We have a waiver at the front gate. We, anytime any corporate events or members sign up, every document that they go through, the rules and regulations, the membership agreements, the entry to the track, the corporate event agreement, the track rental agreement, everything has that verbiage. And then we have a lot of redundancy related to safety. When they come inside of the complex, they'll sign another document that has to do with, hey, do you want insurance on a go-kart, or do you want to rent a go-kart? And I'll clip that again and put it there, because we've had instances where people have gotten through the gate, not signed a waiver, had an injury, albeit minor, broken a finger or whatever, and having that redundancy as it relates to a digital waiver, a printed waiver, or an insurance waiver, whatever have you, has saved us from a standpoint. And then I've gone as far as anywhere you enter the track, I've got another sign says you can die, you cannot go home if you enter this track. And I have enter at your own risk on the go-kart track, on the asphalt, on pit out. Now let's talk a little bit about if something happens. So we have a advanced life support ambulance that's got paramedics, and they've got a drug box, which means they can push medicine to these people, IVs, adrenaline, whatever else have you. AEDs on site. We have fire and rescue, and all these people are very, very well trained. And actually, we just upgraded our EMS and fire from what we used to have radically. I mean, they had old trucks and old ambulances, and just their attire was not as good and as tight. And now we have brand new trucks and brand new ambulances, and the people look and feel the same way. And we're constantly doing training. And we now just brought aboard a guy that is over our safety. And he's over safety from an OSHA compliance to a track safety to a corner marshal safety to employee safety, member safety, whatever have you. And he's in essence, for lack of a better phrase, the police of the facility, because he just kind of walks around and watches, our engineering team, lock and tagging all the equipment. Are they, being safe? Do they have harnesses? Are the corners facing the proper way on the go-kart track instead of their backs to the go-karts? Because we've had some incidents where corners have been hit on the track, regretfully. And, do all of our fire extinguishers in the corner stations up to par? It just every little teeny attention to detail. Uh, we really are after. And from what I understand, a lot of tracks aren't that buttoned up. And I think to give them some grace, the racetrack business is a very low margin business. It's very difficult. It's not a business that that I would recommend 99% of people get into. It's just not. And so, you may have to not pay yourself to pay the safety crews. So it's very hard. And this our savings grace and why we've been so fortunate is the go-kart business prints money, and those rental garages print money, and these condos print money, and the condos are new. But so I digress and go into a little bit of a description there, different direction in explaining the safety programs.
No, by all means, we haven't touched on the condo and garage aspect of the property yet, but that's very interesting to me. And I mean, it's a vacation land, right, for your members and owners.
Yeah, I mean, we want to be a place that these guys and gals and their families come to play and stay. And in my mind, I always wanted to really focus on making it sticky for the entire family. And what I mean by that is I built a resort pool with a water slide and a swim shelf and swim up chairs and bubblers and jets that go across it, and and a water slide and a jacuzzi and an outdoor kitchen, putting green and sandbox and chairs and all these things to be able to make it great for mom and the kids. And so we really want it to be a resort to where they want to stay in place. And now we've signed up with a company that is going to build a restaurant, brewery, and distillery on site. And that's just another component of us, making it interesting. And, we do Saturday night socials where we do racing and drag racing and autocross. And we have live music and food and drinks. And we just try to make it a big party, and we'll race big wheels. I mean, it doesn't matter if there's something that somebody says, let's race that. I'm like, yeah. Our next thing is racing. You remember the old Evil Knievel ripcord uh, motorcycles that you pull the ripcord, and you got to be a little older to know what those are. And the motorcycle go flying. That's one of the races we want to do is with those, and you can do anything you want to it. I mean, we've had trebuchets where we've had pumpkin chunkins with trebuchets where you bring your own trebuchet and you launch a pumpkin at a castle we made out of boxes on the other side of the track. I mean, there's a way to make something stupid. We're your Huckleberry.
I love it. And you're situated in north central Georgia, right about 45 minutes north of Atlanta. So you've got great weather, 10 months of the year, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's swung between, we never get 5-degree days here, but we had some 5-degree days here a couple weeks ago. But I mean, it's swinging right now between 70 degrees, and today I think it's 48 degrees. So even in our bad months, it's really not that bad. So we stay operational year round. And the go-kart track, God, Maurice, people will come out in 40-degree raining weather to pay almost double to ride the go-karts on that outdoor pro track. Public go-karts, rental go-karts like Andretti or K1 Speed type, but they're fast. They have 390cc motors on them. They'll do about 63 in rain and cold weather to run on them and pay a hell of a lot of money to do it. So we definitely operate year round. We try to keep the engine moving, and during those slow months, the December and January and February, those are times for planning internally and refinement and looking at our customer touch points and just evolving the business, innovating the business. That's our big mantra: is innovation, innovation, innovate, innovate.
And maybe we should give people an idea of what a membership costs. I mean, now certainly this isn't cheap. I'm just curious what your price points are. I mean, what would it cost me to get in there?
So we've got, because I'm very inclusive but we also are sponsorship invite only now on the main track. So you have to be sponsored or invited by somebody. And why we did that is, one, we want to just police who's coming in the door, because we've only had to exit 2 members in 10 years of operating. We probably should have exited another couple in the beginning, but I was fearful. We were new, we were a startup, we were growing, trying to figure it out. But that invite sponsorship, only has allowed us to kind of avoid some bullets. But we have, back to my point of being kind of inclusive, we have memberships that really allow a wide, economic range to come in. So our top membership is what's called the trophy, and that's 200,000. And our bottom membership is 12,500, and it's 225 a month. That membership gets you 60 days. The top membership gets you 180. And then we have 2 levels in between that, which is called the diamond and the tungsten. And the tungsten gets 120 days. Now, no one is going to use 60 days, let alone 180 in a million years, ever. So if you buy the 60-day membership, you don't get to use any of the 120 days. Your dates are fixed. So you have less access to the track, less weekends, less opportunities to be able to get on the track, but you're paying less, so you're going to get less. And that has allowed us to really have not a lot of congestion on the track. But a negative of it is there's not a lot of congestion. So 5, 10, 15, 20 people on the track in a busy day, unless it's a social or a race series. And it's allowed us to be able to have, a lot of members, but not have, congestion and sitting around and waiting on track. Currently, we have 693 members. As I understand, that makes us the largest member-based club in the world. Anybody can challenge me on that. I may not be right. I'm not up to date with what's latest and greatest, but we're not a budget track where some of these tracks are $2,500 to join and a couple $100 a month, which I don't know how they stay alive.
Yeah, I was going to say, on its face, it might sound expensive, 12 grand to get in the bottom rung, but what does a fishing boat and a trailer cost? What does skiing in Utah 3 or 4 times a year cost? So,
oh, I know that. I'm going there in a couple of weeks. We skiing. I don't know how people afford it. It is. I've got a family of 5, and my wife won't keep her hands off me. I mean, somebody needs to talk to her. I'm not a piece of meat. But no, I say that all the time in front of my wife, and she turns bright red. But we're a blended family, 3 of mine, 2 are hers. But to go on a ski trip, I mean, should we liquidate the 401k this month? I'm exaggerating. Yeah, but love it. But,
I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah.
It's all about your flavor, and there's a lot of recreational activities out there, and it's just all about what you're into. And I can totally see people just jumping on this.
Well, I mean, really, Maurice, here's the thing that I hear constantly about our track is innovation. That's one of them. But the thing that we hear more than anybody from the car manufacturers, from film and TV, from the people that rent the track is, gosh, you're accommodating. You're warm. You're kind. You're problem solvers. And racetracks really have a bad rep with, hey, there's the asphalt. They slap them on the ass and send them out there, and don't knock on my door unless the place is on fire. And that's what we hear time and time again is the culture of the racing community at racetracks when people rent. So we want to love on people. We want to make better humans. That's one of our mantras. One of our core principles is, making better humans through motorsports. And we want people to come here and leave better than they came. Now, we can't always do that because we're in an extreme type D, high type A personality environment. So it's very difficult to, make that level of people happy when they're used to being, at Ritz or St. Regis or whatever have you, the Shutters, whatever have you. And but we strive. And we try, and we just try to serve the hell out of them and love on them. But,
Yeah, no, good customer service is key. Jeremy, how about your own car passions, your own interests? I mean, I bet you got a pretty interesting garage.
I've had a bunch of different race cars and cars, E30s, Miatas, Super Sport 999, GT3, Panameras, Rovers. I went trucks. Anything to try to keep me slow on the street. So there's been a little bit of everything: supercross, motocross, street bikes. I'm a high school dropout and ended up in a homeless shelter for a couple years and never went back to school. Kind of got my GED, but it really wasn't a reputable GED kind of thing. So I'm going to say I really don't have a GED. And so I had a 69 Firebird when my dad threw me out of the house, and it had a flat tire at the apartment complex. And it was my brother's car. And still to this day, he's angry. I didn't have enough money to get the tire fixed. So it was towed in the apartment complex, because if you have a car with a flat tire, they're going to tow it. Well, it was $280, $83, I think, to get it out of impound. And I could not get this car out of impound. And so my 69 Firebird with the original paint and a 455 motor that I bought from my brother that was in great shape was taken by a car lot for $283. And so my sister came down to rescue me and, get me out of this abandoned house that I was living in. And she said, "Do you want me to get the car out of impound?" And I was like, "Nope. I just want to leave." So I left the car. So I built a 1969 Restromod with Porsche Panamera interior in it, and an LS3 with 6-speed paddle shift and Detroit speed suspension and 660 horsepower, just tire shredder monster with an insane car stereo in it from Cartoons of Atlanta that took them 2 years to put in it. And this car is just ridiculous. Just is ridiculous, and it looks badass, and it's a sleeper, and it's a lot of fun.
What I'm really surprised about is you had it rough growing up.
Yeah, it was tough. I had a tough dad.
So, Jeremy, with that rough upbringing, what turned you around? I mean, you were going down the wrong road, right?
Yeah, I was pretty bad off. I was a partier, heavy partier, in every way you can think. Um, I just was kind of off the rails. And, what got me turned around was a buddy of mine, Alex True, and I got dirt bikes. And I traded something for this RM 125. And this thing was a piece of I mean, clutch was gone, fouled plugs, could never keep running or anything else. But God, I loved this bike. And I owned a car audio shop, kind of a customizing performance shop. I was about 19, 20, somewhere around 21, somewhere around there. I can't remember. Those years are a bit cloudy. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to party as much. I want to be able to ride my dirt bike. And so I replaced one habit with another. And I scaffold throughout my life in that type of scenario. That's how I rebuilt myself. And I would write lists of, what I'm good at and what I'm not good at the beginning of the year. And I would just try to work through those lists to try to make myself a better human. And I would listen to any book on tape. Isn't that funny?
It is.
And read books, which I couldn't really do because I'm too ADD to read, and just try to rebuild myself and be around people that were better people. And so I just rebuilt myself one stupid step at a time, and just had a knack for running businesses and turning around businesses uh, and helping within businesses and being successful in the role that I was in, but then hey, can I help in this area? Can I help in the mailroom? I mean, I'm being silly. What about our reception? Can we do this? Can we talk this way? How, when you call us, we use the Chick-fil-A, how may I serve you? When they answer the phones I just was interested. I wanted to learn. And some people can get behind the wheel of a race car and be fast. Some people can get behind a piano and play. I just, for some reason, just was good at business. And I think it came from my grandfather. My brothers are good at business and successful. And so it was a crazy run.
No, it's really interesting, and this is going to sound cliche, but you believed in yourself, which a lot of people do not.
No, I didn't.
Really?
I didn't. I just wanted to forgive my French and prove them wrong. Everybody thought I would be dead in high school. I mean, I was bad. I have more dead friends in high school than I have alive friends. That's a fact. A lot of drugs, violence, guns, stuff like that. I was in Mobile, Alabama, which was really rough back then. And I was thrown out of one school and went to a school where I was absolutely the minority of the school and just kind of rough upbringing. But I just really wanted to be better. And like I said in the beginning of the track, in building the track, I had zero confidence and desire that I was the man to do it and walk it across the finish line. But sometimes if they push you off the diving board, you got to swim away from the sharks. And that's exactly what I did. And I was motivated by that. So, and I'm motivated by challenge, things I don't know. And I really enjoy learning things. And I don't know a lot of stuff, but I like to learn and I like new challenges. That's why I'm looking into other businesses and industries right now that are outside of what I'm doing now. And I'm involved in other industries from a standpoint of investing and working with and being on the boards of and things like that.
Well, listen, you make me want to jump on a plane right now. I would love to come out there and check out the track sometime.
We'd be honored to have you.
Jeremy Porter, CEO of Atlanta Motorsports Park. Thanks for being on.
Hey, thank you for having me.
That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. Please follow, rate, and review the podcast and share it with your friends. You can support the show at buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage. Make it a monthly contribution for as little as $2 or a one-time gift if you like. I'll see you back here on Wednesday, February 22nd, when photographer Bart Koikens returns to the show. He'll be talking about a new book that caps his incredible series on Porsche cars. And we'll discuss his latest adventures. He's quite a globetrotter. So until then, I'm Maurice Merrick. Thanks for listening.